Guys, we are back here and we are going to discuss something about the continuous and discrete signals. You might have studied all these in some previous course like signals and systems. Nevertheless, there is no harm in revising it, especially from the point of view of advanced process controls, which make use of these discrete signals, or what we can say finally as the digital signals, because these signals will be used in the digital controls as we have seen in the previous sessions also. So friends, first of all, going back to the basics, if we see that we have a continuous signal, this is a continuous signal and it is here for around 12 seconds. It's available at every moment of the time, howsoever small you may take it. But when you put a kind of sampler and that sampler is going to sample this signal only at some discrete times, that is, it's going to sample it at t is equal to 0 second, then it's available at t is equal to 1 second and 2 second and so on up to 12 seconds. But in between the two sampling times, this signal is 0. So the signal is available exactly at t is equal to 0, neither earlier nor thereafter. So this signal is in the form of impulse. Then it becomes 0. And then again it comes at t is equal to 1 second, not at zero point 0.9 or 0.99, and it vanishes immediately after. It doesn't even sustain for till zero point 0.1 or zero point 0.01 second over and above what it is at t is equal to 1. So it is in the form of impulse, and the strength of the impulse, because otherwise if we see the amplitude of impulse is infinite, the strength of impulse is equal to or equivalent to the magnitude. So if we plot the strength, you see the overall shape of this system, it remains almost the same as that of the original signal. So this is what we are going to see step by step. How are we going to deal with these kind of continuous signals converted to the discrete signals? So what we see is that these discrete signals are available at t is equal to nt, where n is some discrete number like 0, 1, 2, and the capital T in this case is 1 second. It can be more than 1 second also. It can be less than 1 second also. That depends upon the kind of system we are dealing with. Friends, if we see that this conversion of continuous signal to discrete signal happens with help of what we call it as sampler, and the discrete signal is normally, it is represented by this y, and then you put a star or an asterisk on the top in the of this y, and this becomes the discrete signal. The moment you see the star over here, it means that it is not a continuous signal, but it is a discrete signal which is available only at certain points of time. So ultimately, if you see that you can very well have any t, you can have t is equal to 2, 3, 4 second, and as the value of t increases, the number of samples, it definitely goes down. Now you have sample available at, in this case you have sample available at t is equal to 0, then you have sample available at t is equal to 3, and then 6, and then 9, and then 12. So earlier you had 12 plus 1, 1 was at t is equal to 0. You had 13 samples. Now in this case you can see you have only these 4 plus the 1 at t is equal to 0, if at all. You have only 5 samples. So you can see over here that as the sampling time increases, number of samples that goes on decreasing. So this is the biggest advantage of increasing the value of t, so that we have to deal with lesser number of samples and it will be easier for us to process those lesser number of samples. So natural tendency would be that we take t as high as possible so that we can have lesser number of samples to deal with, so you don't have to go in for large number crunching processes. But then there is a limit to which we can increase this value of sampling time capital T, that we shall be seeing in the next slides. So friends, we see what is the best sampling rate. If you see that I take only one sample in a complete cycle. We have a sinusoidal wave, and we shall be taking pure sinusoidal waves because they are very easy to understand. And we have taken only one sample, and let us say that sample is taken over here. And if we repeat it exactly at one frequency, or you can say one sample per second, in that case what will happen, I will have another sample over here, and then I will have another sample over here. So in this way what I will get is, I will get sample over here and a sample over here and a sample over here. And someone may ask me that you reconstruct a sine wave using these samples. Even if I have some idea that the sine wave is having this frequency, even then I have number of ways in which I can reconstruct this sine wave. It can be reconstructed having a larger amplitude, or it can be reconstructed having a lower amplitude, and so on and so forth. So there is no unique reconstruction of a sine wave from these samples. So this is the biggest disadvantage of using the sampling which is of the lower side. We have used only one sample, we have taken only one sample per cycle, and that is going to lead to this kind of situation where you can say that you do not have a unique reconstruction of the periodic signals. So sampling once per cycle leads to a kind of situation where we cannot have unique reconstruction of periodic signal. It means we have to go in for slightly higher frequency rate. Now let us see what is that slightly higher frequency of sampling to be done for conversion of continuous signals to discrete signals. Let us say I have now taken a kind of sampling which is being done once over here and once over here, and then we do it once over here and once over here. So it means that I have, let us say we have one cycle over here, another cycle over here, and then I have the third cycle over here. And in these three cycles I have taken 1, 2, 3 and 4 samples. So I've taken 4 samples in 3 seconds. So you can say I have taken 4 by 3 samples in one cycle over here, and that will lead to, as you can see, that is going to lead to a kind of situation where you will have one sampling point over here, as you can see in the upper figure and the lower figure. You have another sampling point over here, another over here, another over here, and another over here. So what you see that if I try to reconstruct a sine wave using these sample points, the first possible thing which comes to your mind as you visualize it, that you will have a sine wave which looks like this. And my dear friends, this reconstructed sine wave is nowhere near the original sine wave which we had taken and which we had sampled. So this means that whatsoever was the original signal, once it is sampled for, and it is sampled for in a manner that we have 4 by 3 samples in a complete cycle for whatsoever the frequency was available to us, this is going to give us a total misrepresentation of the original signal. And this process of getting the signal, which is not at all like the original one, is known as aliasing. You must have gone through this process. And then we have anti-aliasing filters to prevent this kind of thing to happen in case we have any kind of higher frequency components coming over. So we are just recalling all those fundas to refresh, so that you can be using those things practically in the sessions to come in case of advanced process control. Let us see that we have over here a sinusoidal wave, and it is sampled with a period equal to 3/4, or you can say with the frequency equal to 4 by 3, whatsoever you may call it. And then we have this process of misrepresentation or altogether new shape emerging, which is known as aliasing. And this is something which we do not like, which is going to have a total havoc which may be created by the fact that we are supposing the signal to be sampled, and that supposed signal is altogether different from the original signal. So what we see that if we use one sample, it is not sufficient. If we use 2 by 3 samples in a one cycle, again it's not sufficient. So we conclude that we have to have at least two samples for the sinusoidal frequency which is available in the signal. Now this is a pure sinusoidal wave. Many times we have the kind of periodic signals which are not pure, and they may have certain kind of harmonics. It means that whatsoever is the fundamental frequency, along with that you may have the third harmonic and the fifth harmonic and the seventh harmonic and so on and so forth. So that way whatsoever is the highest frequency available in the signal, we first of all identify that highest frequency. If at all there is any frequency higher than the highest which is coming in the form of noise, we have to filter it out, and those kind of filters, my dear friends, are known as anti-aliasing filters. So once you fix that this is the maximum frequency which is available, let us say the maximum frequency which is going in is 100 hertz in any form, including the harmonics or whatsoever. So anything more than 100 hertz is filtered out by anti-aliasing filters. And then at that moment of time, once that highest frequency is fixed, we then decide that the minimum sampling which is to be done, it has to be at least twice this 100 hertz. It means we have to have 200 samples per second to avoid any kind of aliasing which might be done. And this, my dear friends, is also known as Nyquist-Shannon theorem. You might have studied this Nyquist-Shannon theorem earlier. I'm repeating it for your benefit, so you can just now have a complete visual picturization of the process of aliasing and how it can be avoided. Practically, whenever the situation arises like this, I take a minimum of 10 times the sampling rate to the maximum available frequency. Although even 5 times is safe enough, but I'm slightly cautious in my approach, and I take 10 times the samples per second as compared to the maximum frequency of that. So whatsoever is the maximum frequency, the maximum frequency, let us say I'm dealing with EEG, electroencephalogram, the maximum frequency is, let us say, I suppose it is 50 hertz, then I will take 500 samples per second. If I putting some filter, and I'm saying that in any case my highest frequency is not more than 36 hertz, in that case I will take 360 samples per second to be very sure that all the components are included and nothing of the sort of aliasing happens in my signals after I sample it. So now we will be going in for the mathematical representation of this sampled signal in the form of impulses. And as I told you, these impulses are available at sampling point small t is equal to n times capital T, as you can very well see on the screen. And this is represented by, mathematically I told you that you put a star or an asterisk on the top of y. So the impulses available are given by, as you can see over here, this y and t is the magnitude, and this delta t is the Dirac function, or what you can call it as the impulse function, and it is happening at the delay of nt. If there is no delay, t is equal to 0. As you can see, this t minus n will be over here equal to 0. then as this n progresses, the value will be available at t minus 1t, t minus 2t, t minus 3t. These are the past signals available as compared to what at time t is equal to is we are having right now, and this is how it is mathematically represented by this equation. And we see that I can have a complete series of these signals. This was just one sample. We can have complete series of the signals available at t is equal to 0, t is equal to capital T is equal to 2 times capital T is equal to 3 times capital T, and so on and so forth. So this is represented, as you can see over here, by a complete set of signal, the present signal and the previous signal and the one more going back in time, previous to previous signal, and so on and so forth. So this is represented, as you can see, in this mathematical form, which can be condensed further to be represented in terms of sigma, and we can say that the total available signal is from n is equal to 0 to n is equal to infinity, and we go on going back and represent this total signal in discrete form in this format. And friends, this format is very important because you all have been dealing with Z transforms. It is very important to understand once again, if you have not understood it in the previous sessions in the previous course. Why do we go in for Z transform? This we shall be dealing with in the next slide. Friends, you can see over here we have this equation which we had seen earlier, and this equation now I have taken in this format, and I'm going to take the Laplace of this. The moment I take Laplace of this, what happens? Laplace means that any delay of capital T becomes e the power minus ts. If it is delay of nt, it can be represented as multiplied by e the power minus nts into Laplace of whatsoever was the impulse function, and we know that Laplace of impulse function is unity. So this is anyway unity. It is going to go away with it, and we will be left with this expression. So this expression represents the Laplace of this mathematical equation in time domain. The moment I take Laplace of this, I get to have this in the frequency domain in the Laplace form s. So friends, this is what we are going to see, that ultimately the discrete signals, once we take it in the Laplace domain, they become something like this, and we have this continuous function over here, this e the power minus n capital T s. This will be repeatedly coming. By continuous I means it's continued. So it's repeatedly coming in all the expressions, and we don't want this exponential thing to be happening. So I want to replace this e the power minus nts by something which is simpler in approach, and that is why we define another variable. We call it as z, and that z we take it as e the power capital Ts. So this e the power minus n t s, ultimately if you put it by z, it will become z the power minus n, or you can call it as z the power minus n. So this z, ultimately by taking this kind of transformation, we go in for z transforms, and they make these mathematical expressions much more simpler. This is the reason we go in for z transforms, and all those z transforms which we have been dealing with. What is the z transform of impulse function? What is the z transform of unit step function, of the ramp, of sine and cos? So all those are taken because we want to convert e the power ts to something simpler, and that e the power capital Ts is taken as z, and this we shall be remembering for all the future sessions which we'll be holding for this particular subject. So friends, this equation becomes easier now. The exponential term is gone, and in terms of z transforms, we define therefore this z domain or discrete transform as the signal now becomes z the power minus n instead of having e the power minus n tau s. So this is more complicated thing. We have eliminated all those things and we come to something simpler as z to the power minus n. It means that the moment we go on moving back in time for the previous signals, we keep on multiplying by z to the power minus 1, and then again it becomes z to the power minus 2, and so on and so forth. So this forms the basis of Z transform, which you have been studying for I don't know how many semesters. Perhaps now the funda is clear. Why do we go in for this kind of Z transform? So friends, we come to the application that after sampling, when we have the discrete signals, we want to convert them back into the continuous signals. And for that, we use hold element, and that element can be a zero order hold element or that can be a first order hold element. And we shall be discussing here or seeing with our own eyes the performance of zeroth order and first order hold system in the following diagrams. See, this is the discrete signal which is available, and I want to reconstruct this discrete signal, and I will be using the hold function. First, if I use zeroth hold function, it is called zeroth because it doesn't require any past signal. So whatsoever is the signal available, that strength is held at that point. It doesn't require even a single extra past sample. That's why it is called zeroth hold system. And the moment we apply this zeroth hold system or zeroth hold to this discrete signal, the kind of reconstructed continuous signal will look something like this. And you can see over here that you have the sample was available. It was just held at that point till the next sample arrives. The moment next sample arrives, it immediately jumps to that point, and from that point onwards it's holding it to the level till the next sample arrives. So for this sample it is going to be just holding it to the point till the next point arrives. So what we see over here, that we have some error. We were expecting the signal to be like this, right? But we have some error. For this point, you can say the area of this triangle like thing is the error. For this portion, the area of this triangle like thing is the error. Here the error is much less. Here the error is slightly more and slightly even more, and so on and so forth. So these errors, many times we tend to neglect these errors. Sometimes if we see that these errors cannot be neglected, then we have to go in for some alternative methods. And one of the alternative method is that we go in for first order hold system instead of zeroth order hold. And why it is called first order? Because it requires one past sample along with the present sample. And once we use that kind of first order hold system, the reconstructed signal will look something like this. Here you can see this is the first disadvantage of first order hold system, that when only this signal was available, we cannot reconstruct the system. We have to have at least two signals, that is, along with the present signal, you have to have one past signal. And when these two signals, that is, the past signal and the present signal, these two are combined, we get a slope. And that slope is continued till the next signal is available. So the reconstructed signal will start from here, it will not start from here. So this portion of this signal will be lost and it will move over here. The moment next sample arrives, it jumps to that, and then at this point of time, when we connect this point with this point and then we continue with the same slope, the reconstructed signal will move up like this. And then the next signal comes, it immediately jumps down, in this case to the signal, and now we are going to join the previous signal with this signal, and then we have to extend it further, and then and so on and so forth. It jumps to this point, and then we're going to move from here to here and continue with the same slope to this point, and then again it jumps to this point, and so on and so forth. So my dear friends, you have now understood the reconstructed signal will be looking like this. So you see, if on close inspection, you will see that over here, first thing is that signal is not available in this region. I'm going to compare it with the zeroth hold. Second is the error will be smaller in this triangle, will be approximately same as you compare it in this triangle, will be definitely smaller in this triangle, will be definitely smaller in this triangle, but it will be large in this case, and this is something which is not very much appreciable. Anyway, some people say that okay, we have only one error over here and rest of the things are coming better and better over here. So some people prefer this kind of approach, some people better going for this kind of approach. We'll be comparing both the approaches and seeing that in which case what kind of hold signal, what kind of hold system should be applied. Should we go in for the zeroth order or should we go in for the first order? That all depends upon the type of signal which we have, as we shall be seeing this in the forthcoming slides. This is the comparison of a zeroth and the first order hold. So we first go in for a slow changing signal. The moment we go in for a slow changing signal, you can see that if we apply the first order system, we will get a signal which is coming like this, and in case you apply first order system, you will have a signal which is coming like this. For the zeroth order system, the signal is like this, and for the first order system, the signal is like this. And you can see that in this particular case, when we have slow changing signals with respect to the sampling time, that is, we have very good amount of sampling done and the changes are very less as compared to slight change occurs in between the two sampling times, we find that the first order hold is definitely better as compared to the zeroth order hold, because here you can see the errors over here and here are quite high as compared to in this case, which is just hugging the signal like this. So one is tempted at this stage to conclude that the first order hold is better as compared to zeroth order hold. But my dear friends, this is only coming because you have a slow changing signal, or you can say it is coming only because you have a very fast sampling taking place. And very fast sampling again has its own disadvantage. The basic disadvantage of very fast sampling is that you will have large number of samples and you will have large number of numbers and you require large number of number crunching and so on. So this advantage of first order system as compared to zeroth order hold is coming at the cost of very high sampling, which has its own cost, and therefore we have to see what happens in case we reduce the sampling. It means that now the signal becomes fast as compared to the sampling time. This is what we are going to see in the last slide over here. My dear friends, is that again you have a signal which is having sampling done at not very fast rate. The signal is changing faster and the sampling is not as fast as the signal is. So you can say this is a fast changing signal. And here if I apply the zeroth order hold, I will get a signal like this. And in case I apply first order hold, I will get a reconstructed signal like this. And this is quite visible without my explaining that in first order system, the peaks as you're getting in terms of error are much higher as compared to in case of zeroth order hold. So in case you have an option, either you go in for very high sampling rate, in that case you can go in for the zeroth order system, or the best thing is that you don't go in for very high sampling rate. You avoid first order hold in any cases, and you go in for zeroth order system of the hold, along with sufficiently high sampling time but not necessarily very high sampling time, because the moment you increase the sampling rate to the extent that the signal is apparently slow, so that you can apply first order hold, so it's going to have lots and lots of loading on the computing system, which we normally avoid. So the conclusion is that most of the system designers, they go in for first order hold, as compared to in case of they go in for zeroth order hold as compared to in case of first order hold, so that they can have a little bit compromise on the sampling time. I hope I have made myself very clear over here, and you now know what is the reason we go in for zeroth order hold in comparison with the first order hold. Most of the designers, they prefer zeroth order hold for their systems. In case you have any queries relate, which are related to discrete signals, and the reason why we go in for Z transforms and the hold circuits which we are designing for, you can always contact me through any of the means: WhatsApp or telephone or Zoom sessions or face to face, if the situation so allows. I hope you have enjoyed this session also, and I thank you for being with me for more than half an hour in this session. Have a safe stay and enjoy learning.